Okay, yes, I will be recording. I appreciate the reminder. Thank you. All right, so let's move ahead in our lecture. Our schedule for this evening, I'm going to depart from the lecture a little bit and essentially talk about some of well, essentially what has been noted in the last couple of years as the 12 best jobs for the future. And specifically, I'm going to highlight as well jobs that center around database analytics, business intelligence, and all that. So we're just going to spend a few minutes on that. Then we're going to go into well, I generally will have a review, and then we'll showcase and I may do that. It really depends. If you've done exemplary work, and what I will do if I showcase your work, I will make it anonymous, but you'll know your own work, and then you get essentially 1 week's worth of participation, and that's just a way that I highlight the exemplary students who go out of their way to ensure that the quality of their work is very high. So we've already had a very simple review. I'll probably just do a quick showcase. And then I'll go into the topic 2 objectives and a lecture on the topic 2 material. And then finally, we'll talk about the DQs, the assignments, the DQs, the weekly homework. And then we do have an in-class exercise, and it is posted under the question for the instructor. Basically, it's another, it's the last part of this presentation, and it's just an assignment that I'd like for you to work on while we are in our little class, our lecture. All right. So just to give you a little bit of background, I have been a consultant for this placement / technology. Well, they branch out to just about any industry. Robert Half. I don't know if any of you have heard of them. How many of you have heard of Robert Half or have even dealt with them?
I have.
You have? Good. Well, I've been a consultant with them actually probably 25 years ago. They helped me get into a systems engineering, networking engineering position. And ever since then, I've been essentially consulting, interviewing, et cetera. And every year they will send me information about specific industry jobs or topic of jobs. And I generally like to showcase that to my students. All right. So let's talk about what's happening, especially in lieu of our current situations, the COVID, all the things that are happening. Obviously, anything that has to do with data, anything that has to do with remote, helping companies provide for remote work environments, et cetera. Those are really becoming a focus of most of the industry and enterprise. So if you're contemplating, and I know a lot of you are already essentially either you're planning to enhance your current position by adding analytics or whatever, or maybe you're looking to change industry. I can tell you right now, there's a lot of movement, and there's many prediction models for the future that will obviously involve managing data analytics, business intelligence, big data analytics, et cetera. And essentially, yes, many of these are technical in nature, but you don't have to be technically minded or technically, the IT side of it or the engineering side of it. But even as you're continuing to learn about SQL and its importance to database management or data management, then you'll be further along as far as essentially the usefulness of your skills in the industry. And that's primarily what I've seen, as I've been on many panels over the last, even pre-COVID, that we're performing prediction models as far as where we're going. And I can liken this or compare this to the 80s when basically the internet was starting to take off, and anyone that knew anything about HTML, they were treated as all-knowing. It's essentially the same currently with technology, and more specifically with anyone that knows anything about managing data and using data for decision making, etc. So I just thought I'd throw together some of the ones that I thought that would be pertinent to essentially this particular degree. Once you finish this degree, there's certain things that you can do with it. But let's take a look at some of the more, and these I will admit these are more leaning towards the technical side, but you'll see that essentially what you're looking at as far as your skill sets and what you're developing as far as and what you can use with this particular degree is a part of some of these opportunities. So things like mobile application developer, and that's essentially becoming well, actually I know that since this report came out the beginning of the year, and things have changed slightly. The whole remote technology and technical expertise has become more prominent. But these other ones, especially the data ones, are still high up there on the list of the top jobs. The second one is data architect. And then a UX designer, this is more the tech side. I'm not going to get into that too much. And then a digital strategist is someone who works very closely with the data analyst to understand business intelligence and front-end intelligence, et cetera. And then the BI analyst or business intelligence analyst is so critical now, especially dealing with all the data. And then systems analyst. And systems analyst is someone that will know both the technical side of the industry and other applications or data, et cetera. All right. Further down, digital marketing manager is very important. A compliance analyst, and another. Whenever you see an analyst in these top job opportunities, this is someone who primarily works with some form of the data within the industry. So keep that in mind. And then obviously a business analyst. And then litigation support e-discovery analyst, that's quite a mouthful, but basically if you go into digital forensics and that side of the cybersecurity realm, then you're morphing essentially those skill sets as an analyst, which once again deals with data, deals with logs, deals with mitigation techniques, et cetera. Member services enrollment manager, and then finally customer service manager as far as the top opportunities. All right, so you're saying, well, so what? How does that apply to me? Well, many of you, if you're interested, you will qualify for a data architect. Data mining. I know you've heard these terms in these classes. Data scientist, that's kind of the top of the heap. But a data architect is someone who understands analysis, who understands what an analyst does as far as data, who understands how to build a front-end environment appropriate for a specific corporation to manipulate the data for decision making. Data architects are usually very, very savvy in SQL, very, very savvy in front-end, like Tableau and things, and Excel, et cetera. And the one thing I do want to mention that's huge now, hopefully you all know what Internet of Things represents. All of these smart devices, all of these things that are controlling your home, that will eventually control you. No, I won't say that. But we all are dealing with Internet of Things. And this is essentially a portal and repository of just tremendous data ports, we'll call them. I mean, it's just tremendous amount of data that's flowing around. So I can tell you right now that most companies, large corporations and enterprise, higher level enterprise, are looking for data architects to understand the amount of data that's being pushed and managed. All right. So a data architect basically, needs analytical and creative skills and in-depth knowledge of data systems and database methodology, as I stated. And my animations are pretty slow. A data architect will have a familiarity with Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server, other systems like MongoDB, any of the NoSQL scenarios, any of the operating systems or programming scenarios, such as Unix, Linux, all of those. And if you're interested, the hotspot for that particular position currently are in those locations: Boston, New York, San Fran, and Seattle. And generally the midpoint salary, and this is the starting salary for a data architect. It's usually about 150K. And then as far as the database related positions that are in the top 12, the business intelligence analyst. How many of you have heard about a BI analyst or have dealt with them or know what they are?
I mean, I've heard of it. I just never dealt with anybody or really know what they do.
Okay.
Yeah, same here.
All right. Well, you all can position yourselves to become either one of these positions, a data architect or a business intelligence analyst. And basically, when you hear the term big data, and which is becoming a common, it's a commonality. There's all types of data that are processed and managed throughout any of the industries. And a BI analyst, basically this position, this is the marquee position as far as feedback, business intelligence, business decision making, using data, etc. It's become, this position has become the one person that can position themselves, to essentially run, all aspects of a company. And most of the larger corporations are depending upon it. The big thing about this particular position, generally this job will involve, using or taking or turning raw data. And if you think about the size of raw data, you're talking about several terabytes of data. A dump that would take, even with our high-speed processors, that would take days to load. And basically, a BI analyst is not afraid of that. They're essentially, this is what they'll do. So, for example, if you understand something like data mining or even Excel and its usage to create pivot tables, then you already have a head start on a BI analyst type of scenario. All right. So essentially, this BI analyst will probably and more than likely have some type of education in finance or business or information systems. All of those will apply. And I've seen individuals that have expertise in all of those areas. Generally, a senior business intelligence or BI analyst will start at about 101K, and that's fluctuated so much. That was actually the beginning of the year. That may even be even higher now, halfway through the year. But for example, if you have an MBA along with your this degree, you essentially will be, you would be highly desirable in a business intelligence analyst position. Those are the type of positions that you don't normally see advertised on job boards. They're generally very hidden, and essentially what you would start out, if you're interested, you would start out as a business analyst. And a business analyst is essentially the entry level position as far as analysis. And basically, yeah, a business analyst is the person that bridges the gap between, the front end and operations of the business with the IT, with those crazy, geeky, egg-headed IT folks. And basically, they can talk programming languages. They can speak about database structures. They can speak to um, relational database models, et cetera. All of that. A business analyst is essentially um, experience in all of those areas. And yes, the business analyst is the all around, essentially the person that will take the lead on any type of association with business operations and information technology. I've worked with several business analysts that started out their route as some type of engineer or IT, and decided to broaden their exposure and their expertise. Usually, these are the ones that are building those decision-making trees that are based, primarily on data. Mostly working with the higher level representatives within the company that deal with data. For example, a business analyst, depending on what your expertise is, could easily become a BI or business intelligence analyst. And if you're interested, and I know for a fact that, if you're willing to move to someplace like San Francisco or Minneapolis, I mean, there's a plethora of positions that involve this particular jobs, these skills as far as a job. Yes, Fernando, you raise your hand. Go
Yeah, I
ahead.
just have being that you are experienced in the field and you're here in the Phoenix area, what kind of growth do you see in these types of positions in this area here? I mean, I've seen like a couple of companies that offer positions, but is there a good demand in the Phoenix area?
Very, very good question there, Fernando. As a matter of fact, the answer to that question is yes. It was actually growing quite rapidly. As you know, there's several, Google, Apple, Microsoft, they're all planning to construct pretty high level facilities out here. But obviously the COVID, the pandemic slowed everything. But if you're wanting to stay, and probably in alignment with when you finish this degree, I would say in 2 years or so, the demand will be quite high, just as high as these other larger metro areas. Phoenix is slowly growing, even industry-wide. It's very similar to where it was back in the 70s and the 80s, and then it disappeared because all of these other cities became more desirable. But now Phoenix is becoming more so on the map. However, it's slowly building. It's not building as fast as the economists would like, but it will be here. I mean, it'll definitely be here. Phoenix will be another hub. So that's a very good question.
Yeah, and I've seen like new companies like Nikola, which is like the new Tesla competitor. They're trying to make like the electric semi trucks and whatnot. So I do see a lot of companies coming in, but I was just wondering if, if there's such a demand for stuff like this.
Yes, there is a demand. There's not a high demand yet in Phoenix. I guess that's my kind of conclusive answer. But
it's more manufacturing city than this.
Right. Essentially, yes. So, but these both the startup companies that are pretty substantial and the companies that are relatively established, like, yes, Google is planning to build this huge facility out here by 2025. So, and so is Microsoft, so is Apple. So, among a few, and that's a big boost in our economy out here. So, and they're always looking. They always have these huge data centers, and they're always looking for someone who's knowledgeable as far as business intelligence and business analysts. So, but it's kind of a slow moving process currently from what I can tell as far as the industry.
Professor, this is Andrea. I have a question.
Go ahead, Andrea.
What would you realistically say that we should start off as and like build our way up? I've had a lot of professors tell me in the past to start as a business analytic person and then move my way up to data mining. Is that a realistic move? How is the industry approaching recent graduates with their masters?
Okay, very, very good question. Now, from my experience, I'll tell you this first. With your master's in this business analyst, don't go for just a this particular position, because the industry is looking for you to know a little bit more than that, than an entry level. This is essentially an entry level, but there's a caveat to that. I mean, it's just like any other, individual coming out with their masters. That obviously qualifies you for a higher salary per se, or even a higher level position. Most companies will ask you, do you want to go the management route or the practitioner route where you'll be leading a team? So all that being said, my recommendation is because these companies are looking for someone to lead the charge. I would go from the top down, believe it or not. It doesn't make sense, but if you see essentially like a data, well, depending on your comfort too, because they will expect you to know a lot about the technical side if you're going for a data scientist or a data architect. But whereas a business analyst doesn't need to know quite that much. So I would say that's a pretty good recommendation, but I think you should set your essentially your plateau or your benchmark a little bit higher in my mind.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Great question. Yeah.
Javier, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. So you said that like to start from the top up, and then that they expect you to have a pretty good knowledge on several different things. What things do you like have to have like a very strong knowledge about?
And that you guys have very good questions. All right. Let me just preface this by saying I've been on many of these interview panels, and you'll hear this until you feel like you've heard it enough and you're blue in the face. One of the things one of many of the things that most companies are looking for are very solid soft skills, and hopefully you all know what soft skills are: critical thinking, flexibility, adaptation, communication, etc. Okay, that being said, yes, that's becoming equally important, but the hard skills are important as well. And one reason why you have two SQL classes, SQL itself is a lost art, and many of those industry specialists out there have no idea how to communicate with a database. So definitely make sure you're comfortable with SQL, comfortable with stored procedures, system functions, all of that is an absolute must. But on top of that, and we'll go into a little bit in this class, you have to know some of these platforms, some of these top-end platforms. And the reason why we don't go into them in detail, most of these platforms are proprietary, which means that you'll be introduced to something, and you'll have to break it down right away and just figure out how it works. But what I would recommend, because most of these platforms, somewhere in there, they're issuing SQL statements, and that's where things get lost. So SQL is becoming so important, and most of these high-level database employees are forgetting that, and that has become a problem in the last 10 years. So, I don't know. Did that answer your question, Javier?
Yes, thank you.
Well, all right. Any other questions? All right, I just wanted to.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Celia.
So if we're going to aim for the top jobs that shown us, like I would really want to aim for that, but I know that when they advertise for these jobs, they ask for experience. It's kind of critical. Like, how do you obtain that experience, right after graduation?
Yes, the ultimate catch-22 and conundrum in employment. And let me just tell you this because I've been an interviewer as well. Of course, we're going to ask for experience. That tells us that you have some idea that you know what to expect. But experience can be mapped out in many ways. Obviously, according to human resources, they have to map it out to certain years within the job. But you'd be surprised. I interviewed a 21-year-old right out of undergrad school, and I mean, basically, this young man went from high school to college. He had zero job experience, but he proved to us that he knew what he was doing. So that mapped out to 5 years of experience. My recommendation, no matter what the listing says, after you finish your master's in this degree, consider yourself with experience, but you have to prove that. And the interviewers will try to challenge you on that. And basically, your education is a level of experience. And I know it's hard to grasp that, but the one thing that I can tell you is that if you go in to these interviews thinking that I don't have any job experience, one, never say that, because life in and of itself is an experience.
Right.
And that's the one thing that you have to prove to these interviewers. If you don't prove that, then they're not going to listen to whatever your skills are. I mean, that's my recommendation. As I said, I've interviewed individuals that have been around a while, supposedly very experienced, and I used to interview engineers as well. I interviewed this one engineer that had been on his job for 10 years, and I would swear that he knew little about what he did. So that's a subjective term in my mind, and it probably is in most of the interviewers' mind. And generally, I can tell you right now that for the most part, not 100%, but for the most part, when you see those listings for years of experience, that's coming strictly out of human resources, not out of the job title manager who's actually going to interview you for the job. And remember, there's so many layers of filtering. You'll interview with someone who knows nothing about the job first, and all their responsibility is to ensure that you're saying the right keywords. So there's all these things that you have to face, but please don't let that I need years of experience stop you from going for these positions that you will qualify for.
Right.
All right. Any other questions? Oh, you all had very, very good questions, and just taking to heart. You're in a very good program. This will provide you kind of a doorway to so many opportunities. It may not seem that way, especially here in the Phoenix Metro, in the Valley, but there are a lot of opportunities out there.
And also, Professor, so you said SQL is like the basics, but then we would find different companies have like a custom type of SQL that they're using. So I feel like that would be very intimidating for me during an interview to find that, it's a sort of different SQL. So how can we prepare for that?
Well, I agree. Good question. There are different flavors of SQL, but if you get over the fear of it looking different, I've been dealing with SQL now for 30 years. SQL is still SQL. It's still the same, very basic, scripted language, and that's another one of those trip-up points that companies will challenge you. But you have to take, and this is another critical thinking and evaluation skill. You have to take a look at really look at what you're observing as far as a SQL. And if you take a broader view, you'll see that SQL is still SQL. And I can tell you right now, there's even at a very rudimentary level, if you look at Oracle SQL versus SQL Server SQL versus the SQL you hardly see it anymore, but even Apple has their own flavor of SQL. And the one thing I've discovered over all the years is that it's truly, there's not any major difference. So don't let that, it's I can tell you now, it is used as a fear factor. I mean, if you look at it and say, I can't understand this, and that's usually, it's usually the case because you're not really looking, deep enough. So don't let that dissuade you from, you have to remember that an interview is basically an obstacle course. So it's designed not to be easy, and it is designed to trip you up, or at least record you tripping so that they know that you can recover, et cetera, et cetera. So, of course, I never interviewed that way. I would just ask direct questions, and I would welcome a little bit of stumbling and stuttering, because that shows me that you're human. So,
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, let's move ahead. Let's talk about our objectives for topic 2. Basically, I'm going to explain case logic programming, principles and the theories behind case logic. I'm going to demonstrate a case logic programming problem solving example. And basically, you're tasked to analyze group data for straightforward aggregation, which whenever you hear the term aggregation or aggregate, usually we're talking about some type of aggregate function, summing, counting, so don't let that, and we're just going to, and that's essentially where we're headed as far as advanced SQL. All right, so the first thing I'd like to talk about, or lecture about, or, well, let's say talk about, is a case expression. SQL case, it is a very unique conditional statement, and it provides like an if-then-else logic for a truly ordinary SQL command, such as select or update. So it does provide a when-then-else functionality. So when this condition is met, then do this. So think of it that way. It's very, very useful, but it's usually that particular direction as far as its functionality. All right, so this functionality provides the developer or the user or the analyst the ability to manipulate the presentation, and the key word here is presentation of the data without actually updating or changing the data as it exists inside the database table. Now, I want you to let that sentence soak in, because it really explains why you would use a case expression. You're not manipulating the data itself, you're manipulating the presentation, which in many cases is as important as the raw data or the existing data, the existing data within the tables, right? So the case expression is pretty much a favored use. You'll see that you can use this in so many ways, and it's pretty easy to, once you get started with it, to understand its multitude of uses. It's quite flexible, and it is the only way to control and control the way your data is evaluated. Basically, the whole idea of SQL Server, taking that table data and using what's known as a predicate, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, and to use functions, primarily select statements, or whatever you need to present the specific data to your audience. So you're asking, well, what's a predicate? Well, a predicate is just that. It's that particular filtering mechanism that you can use normally in a where clause, and it's usually and, or, like, between, as, top. And I'm pretty sure you've seen all of these predicates. Those are the top 6, but there's many more. All right. So case is an expression, not a statement. And this is just semantics pretty much, because it is actually referred to different ways depending on the platform that you're running, but it is truly an expression. And the only reason why I'm highlighting this is that you may see it as a statement, or an expression, don't get lost in that. Basically, the expression is an expression because it returns a result. And as I said, it's mostly semantics. So if you see it or read about it, or it's referred to as a statement, yeah, don't try not to get confused by that, because it is truly just the way it's worded and the platform that it's connected to. All right. All right, so in some situations, in the whole method and process of how things are evaluated, this can be confusing, but you do have to be very careful. So the purpose of this slide is to essentially highlight, why I'm expecting the case expression to do this and my results are quite a bit different. It could be that you're expecting essentially the evaluation to be different than the way it is. And once you see the example, basically this will make more sense. When you're talking about aggregate expressions, and basically you'll see the case when then. And you have to remember that you have to become very comfortable with how the case when then scenario runs. And what's evaluated first, what's evaluated last, etc. So I just want you to take a, kind of a focus on that. All right. So this first very, very basic example will show you that I'm representing the fact that when you run this select case and you have a variable there, when one, then foo, when two, then bar. Now the variable is going to be a certain value. So if the variable is 1, then we're going to represent or create a result of foo. If the variable is 2, then essentially we're going to represent that by bar. Now that seems very, sequentially logically placed, and you really want to think about it that way. For this very simple example, if it's 1, that's going to do something. If it's 2, but what if it's 1 and then 1 again? What happens then? It should still be the same result. And that's the whole purpose of trying to essentially illustrate this to you very clearly. And I talk about that a little bit on this slide. And also, we talk about non-determinism and determinism, and I will illustrate that a little bit more. I think that's one of our DQs. But so the reason it is important to understand the expression, how the expression is evaluated, basically you have to remember that in a case, or it's possible in a case when then that an expression can be evaluated many times. So just keep that in mind. All right, so let's throw out, and basically I'm introducing you to something you may or may not have seen. This is just this convert is just a conversion function. It's a system function, and we're using essentially a convert to create a small integer, and a small integer in this case is going to be will be between the numbers 1 and 3, so it'll be 1, 2, and 3. And basically, what this select is illustrating is going to select a number, a random number between 1 and 3. So it's going to be either 1, 2, or 3. All right. So if you throw that into a case statement, so reading through this select statement, and this result will equal case, and basically we're creating a result. You don't normally need the this particular syntax. I'm just trying to represent that our result will be a random number that will be set to this result that will be between 1 and 3. So basically, we're stating that if that result was 1, then we're going to display the word 1 and etc. 2, 2, 3, 3. All right. So basically, this is a select statement. So there will be some type of result, or there will be a result when you run this select statement. So let me see. So basically, I'm stating that if you run this select statement several times, eventually a result of null will occur. And probably your first question is why? How does that happen if it's going to be a random? Well, the entire case expression is actually expanded to like a search expression. So if you don't, essentially, if you run this several times and you don't account for null, eventually it will produce a null. Either the random number doesn't come from the convert, or it's something that's outside the parameters of a small integer. That it is a possibility. The biggest thing that I want you to learn in this particular select statement is that when you're using a case, it does implicitly have an else null. It's always there. Although we try not to depend on implicit parts of statements like this or expressions. We want to explicitly state it. So what happens if one of the three conditions aren't met? Then yes, it'll return a null. Your result will be a null, and that will happen. That normally happens if you run that a million times. You'll get several nulls out of your expression. And I talk about that more on this slide and actually state that, if you have something like this, and you normally won't see anything like this linear, in a case when, but it's possible that you have some external function running and dealing with random numbers on small integers. The takeaway here, and you'll see, this is a long-winded way to state that you do have to always account for nulls. You have to always account for a condition that's not met in your case when then portion of your case expression. All right. So I talk about how it's not limited to a random function. One thing that I do want to, I know I'm going pretty quickly through this, but basically this is proving one simple point that most of what you want to structure in your case when, well, it is strongly recommended that when you're structuring your case when, then you account for that condition where none of your primary conditions are met. Which means that you want to explicitly state your else statement, and I'll show you what I mean here in a minute. All right. So let's look at this particular select statement, and it's actually a subquery. You're just selecting X and then count of that particular X from, and then you're running a checksum. Basically, you're checking the IDs, see if they're 0, 1, or 2. So don't get lost in the syntax here. It's basically checking a value of the ID column to make sure that it's one of those values, those literal 0, 1, or 2. And then we're doing a group by. And then in the second example, basically I throw in the else clause, and I just want to demonstrate the difference there. If it's 0, 1, or 2, then it's going to create a result of those three literals, 0, 1, or 2. But essentially, if I add the else clause, you account for a value that may return a null, a value that may not satisfy one of the then conditions. And that's essentially more of a best practice in a case when then. So ultimately, what I'm looking for when you build your case when then scenarios, you have a condition, whether it's an actual condition or repeat of a former condition, where you're satisfying all possible outcomes. That's ultimately the purpose here. And I go through several iterations of this particular select statements with the subquery. I'm not going to talk to them in detail, but I do show that if you run these 4 queries so many times, it actually will this representation shows you that it could possibly be a null from query A that many times, but obviously with B, C, or D, because you have the else statements in there, it will not produce a null result. All right. I'm not going to go into those particular aggregate functions, but let's talk about a real-world example. Before I ask for questions. So, and I've seen this. I've actually used something very similar to this. So, as a store owner, there might be a time when sales prices for a product offer. So basically, you're offering up sales prices for your product. So this is a perfect opportunity to write case, because you don't want to change the prices that are listed in your table, but you wanted to display to the consumer a sales price. So what you're going to do, you're going to write a query by pulling the orders and the prices in your database, in your tables, and then you're going to display to the users, whether it's some type of function or application, the sales price. So we look at this very basic select query. You're selecting order ID, orders for customers, order quantity, inventory, and inventory price. And basically what will be produced there is you'll get something that looks like this. Basically, I'm getting the ID, the customer. This is the customer that ordered that particular product, and the quantity that they ordered, and then the product itself, and then the price. And these data points are coming right from the tables in your database. But let's say we want to provide some type of discounted price for the number, either the number of quantity or the product itself. What we can do in this case, so I think the example here, net sales prices are determined and calculated from the data. For the purpose of this exercise, a 25% discount on all current pending orders will be used. So we're adding a 25% discount on all orders. We don't really have an additional condition as far as the orders, the products that have been ordered. So you can write a case statement like this. Basically, it's built on your select statement still. So, and the key factor here, and I will remind you of this, whenever you run a case when then, that is the whole entire case when then is treated like one of your columns in your result table. So if you read through this select statement, so we're selecting the orders, the order ID again, the customer, the quantity, the product, and the price, and then we're adding an additional column. Basically, we're saying that the sales price, and this is the title of the column, is equal to case when price is greater than 0, then price, basically, then you get a 25% markdown or discount. So price is equal to, well, price is equal to price times 0.75. So we all know basic math, right? So we know that that's a 25% markdown or discount. And so when you run this particular query, and then essentially with a case when then, a couple things, you have to have a case when then, and then an in, and then this from is a part of your select statement, and we're just joining an inventory table on whatever, on the product itself. So we're joining it on the product as a product key. And ultimately from that, we're going to get a table, a result table that looks like this. The same as before, but we have a sales price column, which is just the price times 0.75. Does everyone see that?
Professor, so can we go back to the previous slide?
Yes.
So we don't have to like create a column name. It will pick up the sales price.
With this syntax, yes, it'll pick up the sales price. With SQL Server, and I'll show you with SQL Server, you can use this syntax, but you may have to actually add. So this syntax will work, or it should work, but if you have a case when then in SQL Server, you may have to add an as after the in, and then put as sales price. That should work as well.
Okay, so then it would be case when price is greater than 0, then price that as.
No, after the in. Remember, the in is the end of that column. So you would treat it as another column. So if you were aliasing these columns, then you would put an as and then your custom column name. So after the in, remember, everything from the case to in is your case when then expression.
Okay.
Okay?
Professor, on the same query, I have a question. In the case statement, we are looking for the price which is greater than 0, then we are performing something.
Right.
What if the price is less than 0? So in that case, the result will give us a null statement or a blank statement in the sales price field?
Right. So we're hoping that we don't have anything in the database like that. But yes, this is where you would add, before the in, you would add an else to account for that null condition, so that you're not producing, well, you're not, creating a null in your result table. Remember, a null in your result table is a no-no.
So for this particular example you gave, Professor, let's say I'm a business and I want to give the 25% discount when the price is greater than 0. If the price, let's say in place of a 0, we had a different number, and let's say we had a 2, and items that had a price less than 2, I want to leave them at 2, so there's no discount on that. How would you do that?
Right.
Here, because of the no, that's,
No, okay. So you would have two conditions then. You would have greater than 2, or greater than or equal to 2, and then less than 2. So then you would still have you would not have a null statement in your sales price. The sales price would just, you could either state that, well, the consumer would see, or the customer would see that the sales price for that particular product is the same as the regular price. So they would assume that there's no sales. But you would add another message. You can actually add a message, something very simple within your select statement to show that particular condition. So within your second condition, you would say not on sale. Instead of putting a price in a sales column, you would list a price, and then if it's below 2, you would just say not on sale. So there would not be an entry in the sales price column.
okay.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay, who raised their hand? Go ahead. Someone raised their hand. I didn't see.
Yes, I did.
Okay, go ahead.
So I have a question when it comes to this example that you just used. In this class, are we going to maybe use any examples of such as financial balance sheet, or such like use internal rate of return or cash flow analysis or P&L? Are we going to be able to use any of those examples?
Well, you can. I'm not going to go over those type of examples in detail because this is not really a financial analysis class, but obviously you use those particular aspects. But we hold on. Right. So, sorry, to answer your question, I strongly suggest that if you have an example like that and you want to walk through a case, case expression, that's fine. I don't have any specific ones like that as far as using those type of models for this particular assignment week. So,
Thank you.
yeah. Right. So does this this basic example make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
It does.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Was there another question? I'm going to show one of kind of a video that'll explain a little bit more detail about the case expression and to give you some idea. Well, pay attention to how the case expression is built in the examples that that are used here, because it will help you to understand how to form your approaches to the assignment. All right, here we go. Whoops. Okay, sorry about that. I know I'm blowing your ears out. Yeah, sorry about that. Can you all still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Jeez. Yes, I'm supposed to know technology. Oops. All right, where am I?
There's supposed to be audio with this too.
Hold on. Okay, hold on just a second. Let me get my computers working right. Can you guys hear?
No.
No? Okay, 1 second.
Sounds kind of like a ghost just talking somewhere in the distance.
Yes, it's my ghost. All right, hold on. All right. Give me 1 second. Let me stop the share here. All right. All right, so I should have some Jeopardy music playing. All right, here we go.
Going to teach you a little bit about how to use the case statement in Microsoft SQL Server. So in this session, we'll look at what case statements are useful in. Welcome to this YSL tutorial. In this video, we're going to teach you all about how to write joins in SQL Server queries. The topics we'll cover in this session will start with the basics of joins. We'll explain why
Technical difficulties. I know you don't want to know about joins. So.
It doesn't.
Do you recommend those videos if we want to go back and brush up on some things?
Yes, they're actually pretty good. So let me.
Welcome to this YSL tutorial. In this short video, I'm going to teach you a little bit about how to use the case statement in Microsoft SQL Server.
You're not sharing your screen, Professor.
All right, hold on.
Case statements are useful in SQL Server queries. We'll then move on to working with 3 different examples, one to do with numbers, one with text, and one with dates. So let's get started.
Can you hear
In a SQL Server,
Yes, yes.
use a case statement to test different conditions and then return different answers based on whether those conditions have been met. It's kind of like an if function in Excel, or a set of nested if functions, or maybe even a VLOOKUP function if you've encountered those. So in this example, we're going to categorize our films by their running time in minutes. So we'll create a description that will be short, medium, or long based on their running time. So to start with, I need to add a new calculator column to my query, to my select list. So I start by adding a comma and the word case. Now my case statement is going to span multiple lines. And at the end of my case statement, I need the word end. So I wonder if I'll fill that in right now. Then I'm going to head back up inside, in between the case and end lines. And this is where I can start testing my conditions. Each test begins with the word when, and then you have to perform any sort of logical test. So similar things to the things you'd add in a where clause. So here I'm going to test where the film runtime minutes is less than or equal to 90. So that's the first logical test. On the same line, I'm going to write in what I want to happen if that condition is met. So if I find that the film is less than 90 minutes, then I want to provide the description of short. And to begin with, that's all you need for a simple case statement. You can test one condition and give one answer if that condition is met. If I execute this query, I find that most of my films return the word null. However, you can see down here, the film that is exactly 90 minutes long provides me with the answer short. And if I scroll down a little bit further, I should find a couple more in the database. There we go. The nice thing about case statements, even though they look a little bit complex to begin with, is that to add further conditions is really, really straightforward. I'm going to cheat slightly by copying this entire line. And after copying it, I can just simply paste it in a couple more times. Then all I need to do is tweak the numbers that I'm testing for. So I'm going to test for less than or equal to 150 minutes. That will be a medium film. And then less than or equal to 180 minutes. That's going to be a long film. And then I'd also like to take into account anything else. So any running times that are longer than 180 minutes. I'd like those to be handled with this short else statement, and those will be called epic films. So you can see, even though it's quite long and complex, there's a lot of consistency in the way you write your conditions, which is quite nice. So if I execute this query one more time, I should get the description for every single film that has a running time in minutes value. And there we go. Now, although that case statement looks quite long and complex in comparison to some of the other basic calculations you might have performed, it really is just a single calculated column. And I can treat it in exactly the same way as other calculated columns. So for instance, if I wanted to give it an alias, you always add the alias at the end of the calculation. So I can do that in exactly the same way for my case statement. Add an as film duration. And if I execute the query, it provides me with a neat alias, a neat title for the column. If I wanted to add any further columns to my select list, then that's exactly the same again. If I add enter and a new comma, I can bring in any other fields from the tables, or I can create a new calculated column if I need to. But this entire set of block of text between the word case and now my alias is just one single column. So that's one thing that you have to remember. I think probably the biggest annoying thing about case statements is if you want to use the answer the case statement provides in a where clause. If I just temporarily remove my results pane, press Control and R to do that. If I wanted to ask to show me all the films where the duration is medium, then I can't simply use my alias, because we know we can't use an alias in a where clause. So what I have to do is ask where my entire case statement, so I can simply copy this, where my case statement is equal to medium. If I execute this query now, that will give me all of the medium films. Of course, I could have just asked for all the films that were between 90 and 150 minutes long. That might have been a more simple where clause to create. But it's worth knowing that you can use a case statement in a where clause as well, even though it looks a little bit messy. Just to give you an idea of some of the other things you can do with a case statement, I'd like to give you a couple of extra examples. So here's one involving searching for text. I'm going to get my case statement to identify whether a particular film has a particular phrase or word in its title. And I can do that by using the like operator. I'm going to use some wildcard characters as well. I'm going to use the percentage symbol to try to identify films where the word Twilight is anywhere in the film title. And then part of my logical test can provide a simple description of that film. That's a fairly fair and accurate description, I think. I might as well make sure that all my other films aren't tarred with the same brush, so I'm going to use an else as my case statement, I'm going to say when it doesn't contain the word twilight, it's simply probably not bad. And if I simply execute that query, most of my films will be probably not bad. When I find the Twilight films, they are indeed just awful. So there you go. You can use the like operator and any text matches in a case statement as well. You can also use case statements to test for date and time information. So in this example, I'm going to test whether my films were released in the talkie era or the silent movie era. Now, according to Wikipedia, the first non-silent film, the first talkie, was released in October 1927. It was called The Jazz Singer. So I can test when the film release date is less than 1927-10-01. Then it's in the silent era. Else it's in the talkie era, let's call it. And there we go. If I execute this query, I'll get my results. So we've seen case statements involving numbers, we've seen case statements involving text, and now case statements involving dates. If you've enjoyed this training video, you can find many more online training resources at www.wisel.co.uk.
All right. Now, hopefully you made a note of those specific conditions, because basically that, in that video, it's showing you everything that you would need to know about the usages of a case statement. All right.
Yeah, that was very useful.
So
Will there be a link in the announcements for this
what I'd
video?
like to do now is continue our lecture. Are there any questions about the
Hello?
video?
Yeah, can you hear us?
Can
Hello?
you hear Professor?
Yes.
Hello?
Good.
Hello?
Oh, he cannot hear us.
No. Maybe you should put a message on here, chat.
Ah, someone did.
Oh, okay, great.
You can't hear us. I can't hear you.
Yes.
Oh, you can.
More tables in your queries.
Oh.
What is my computers have a mind of
We'll show
their
you
own. All right. Can you hear me now? Can I hear you now?
We can hear you.
Okay. All right.
Professor, I had a question on the case video we just watched. So on the where statement, why can we use the new name that we give, that column?
Because that name is an alias, just like any other column. When you alias the column, you cannot use the alias of the column name in your where clause. That is not allowed. So with that case statement, it's the same thing. The whole case went in, and all the conditions are a simple named column. That's why it makes it a little tricky.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Will you be providing a link for this video? I don't know if there's one in the study materials.
Yes, I will. I will provide a link.
Thanks.
All right. So let's go back to the lecture. Yeah, too many computers. All right. All right. You all can still hear me, right? Well, my computers haven't taken over.
Yeah. We can
Okay. All right. So let's look at our assignments for the week for the topic. Topic 2, DQ1, ask you to review the topic material, Dirty Secrets of the Case Expression. It's an article. Based on this article and the other topic readings, identify one limitation you could encounter in the workplace and describe the strategies for circumventing it. basically, I just want you to read through that article. It talks about certain, limitations with the case expression. Some of them you can just use common sense and figure that out, and then just discuss. Just do a simple discussion about limitations. All right. And DQ2, with case data studies, you are not technically manipulating the data. Now, that's a very factual statement. Explain how would you know if you're looking at a report that had modified data on it. So remember, you're not manipulating the data, but you're producing a result based on the actual values of the data. So if the data have been modified, how could you identify what specific data were changed on? These are they're hypothetical questions, but how would you determine, just based on your research, how would you determine if the data were modified? And then how do you handle that? I mean, how do you manage that? So this is basically just think past, essentially you're dealing with the data, you're dealing with not modifying the data with this display or this result. What happens if the data is modified? Is that a problem or is that not a problem? Will it change your case statement? Will it invalidate the data? Things like that. So there's several resources that talk about essentially the dangers of case, and if you're not managing the data properly, are you representing the data accurately, etc. All right. So that's DQ2. All right. Continuing on DQ2, discuss 3 common reasons data might be modified. Explain ways that data manipulation could become an ethical concern. Justify your ideas with support from the topic materials or relevant industry examples. Yeah, there's enough out there, or you should know enough about manipulating data, dirty data, clean data, making sure that the data is validated, all of those fun things. All right. Well, any questions about the DQs before I go into the assignment?
No, that's pretty clear.
Okay, great. Let me comment quickly. The way everyone's approaching the assignments is perfect. I didn't see any issues. Please continue to do so. It is highlighted in the instructions, but I do, believe me, I've had issues with submissions before. All of you are actually following the directions, so I applaud you all. Thank you. All right. So for this assignment, you'll group data and resolve query errors via solutions appropriate for each. Basically, you're presented with several problems and you're coming up with the solutions. So for each scenario, Word doc or screenshots or Excel, that's strictly up to you. Whatever you're comfortable with, I will accept them as long as I know that you're covering all the aspects of the scenario. I'm very nitpicky about that. So, all right. So the directions, your submission will be assessed on, yes, this is what I'm looking at. So, and I want to make this very clear, the completion of all required elements. And as I said, I'm very detail oriented there. The success of each query. And just to let you know, I test all of your queries whenever you hand them in. I check to make sure they actually run, and then the thoroughness of the information and data provided. So those 3 are essentially the way that I grade your results. And I don't think any of you are having any major issues as far as what you understand as my expectations for the submission. So continue to do so. Okay, problem 1. Yes, we have several problems. That is our approach in this class as far as your learning. So your manager needs you to compile a list of all the products the company sells, as well as the time required to manufacture them. in order to provide this information to the sales department for a presentation of timelines in an upcoming company-wide sales meeting. So your goal is to list all products and the time it takes to manufacture them. I'm not going to tell you the specific tables, but you'll figure it out. So as a part of your listing for all products, your manager specifically needs to know which products take less than 4 days to manufacture or more than or equal to 4 days to manufacture. There's a caveat to this assignment. You'll see that the data are represented kind of oddly based on these conditions, but go ahead and run it based on less than or more than equal to this 4 days as far as your conditions. You'll see that the AdventureWorks database, the product table, and yeah, you'll see. So looking at the production.product table and using the case logic or the case expression, identify each product with a tag of under 4 days or 4 days or more, and title the field time frame. So based on what you know about case, that should not be an issue. So remember, it's under 4 days or 4 days or more.
So quick question on this. So are we supposed to choose one of those items then? Or do we need to cover both, run the case logic for both?
You're running the case logic for both.
Okay.
All right.
Professor, one question here.
Go ahead.
In the task, the description says something different, that is under 4 days or more than 4 days. But in the slide, it is reflecting as under 4 days or 4 days or more.
Yeah, I slightly modified it because there's a specific reason. So
Okay.
just use 4 greater than or equal to 4.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, any other questions about problem 1? Okay, moving on. Problem 2, using the query you just created in problem 1. As a basis, your manager wants to know the numbers of how many products fall into each of the 2 categories. So you are going to use the aggregate function, or you're going to use the sum statement to sum up how many are under 4, how many are more than or equal to 4. And you're still using the case logic, and basically you're using what you've just done, but you're going to sum each of the categories. And if you think about what you're doing, that should not be too difficult. All right.
So, Professor, for that, when we use the sum, are we putting inside the bracket that case statement?
Well, I'm going to have you experiment with that at first.
Okay.
I'm not going to give you that answer right away. And the note says the process requires 2 separate sum statements. So yeah, take that into heart. And don't overthink it. Don't just think about what you know about summing and columns and what you've just learned about case. Okay, I've given you enough hints. All right, problem 3, also related to the upcoming sales meeting. The sales manager is building a report for which a list of states, this is a little bit different than the previous, using a custom market name. So basically, he's having you look at states and regions, and what you're going to do is you're going to use the person.state province table, use case logic to turn territory ID, listen carefully, territory ID into a name market for each of the following: Western, Northeastern, Midwestern, Southwestern, and Southeastern market. So you have to use this territory ID. You have to do some investigation to see, basically the territory ID actually gave you part of the investigation approach. And if you think about this, if you're dividing up the country, et cetera, so you just basically look at the territory ID and assign one of these regions to that territory ID.
I have a question on this.
Yep.
So when I was looking at the table, I realized there was territory ID starting from 1 to 10. So did you want us to divide it in? So would 1 and 2 be Western market, 3 and 4 be Northeastern market? Or
Okay.
did you just,
Okay,
sorry.
I'm not going to give you a definitive answer to that. I need to have you determine what's appropriate for these 5 regions.
Okay. But did you want all of them assigned a value?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And you'll see I want you to do your investigation. There's something about those 10 territory IDs that you need to determine that's a part of this and your investigation of the data.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
But you're right. There are 10 territory IDs, and there's something you have to do to determine whether it's appropriate to just say 1 and 2, etc.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. You're welcome. Any other questions?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ram.
Yeah, so the question is, there's a last statement, make sure to include territory ID and order your results by this field. So are you talking about the order should be based on the territory ID field or the new field which we are going to create as part of the case logic?
The territory ID field.
Okay, territory ID, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Right, problem 4, the sales manager has also identified a need to know year-to-date sales by the new market segment using the same descriptions you developed in problem 3. So basically, year-to-date sales by the new market segment or new market regions. So each of those regions, Western, Northeastern, Midwestern, Southwestern, you want year-to-date sales for each of those regions. Compile this task as per the assignment requirements. And so, and you'll see that there's a very, very straightforward way to determine year-to-date sales. But you will have to use your noggin a little bit. Questions? Yeah, I think you're already working on these assignments, aren't you? All right. Problem 5, now that you have provided the sales manager with year-to-date sales by market segment, in problem 4, the sales manager has one more task to complete, all the information required for the sales meeting. All right, the sales manager now asks you to provide a sales by state year-to-date. All right, so there's a couple things that I want you to determine with problem 5. This may not be realistic based on the existing company database setup. That's the existing. I don't want you to change the setup. I just want you to determine if this is feasible based on the existing database setup. Can you build a year-to-date sales by state? That's the key question. So I want you to explain why and what would be needed for the database to accomplish this data set in the future. So I can tell you, with the way the database is structured, it is not feasible. You'd have to change the database structure, which I guarantee you as a database analyst, if you try to change the structure, a database administrator would come up to your office and choke you. Okay, they would be not too happy. So I would like an explanation as to why it's not feasible. And then what do you think you need to do? This is based on your interpretation of the data and the structure. What do you think you need to do to make this, to create a report for your sales manager that's a year-to-date, that creates a result for a report that's year-to-date by state? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. We had a similar task in the previous class, so I think I get it, but
Okay.
we'll
All right.
see.
Great. Okay. So those are the assignments. What I want you to work on, at least until I want this to be an in class, but if you don't finish it in class, well, we're supposed to be here until 9. So basically, I do want you to go ahead and try to complete this assignment. This is for your participation for the week. And basically the instructions for the assignment, as I stated at the very beginning, is posted in the question for instructor forum. And I want you to post your results back in the forum, and you will get your participation for the week. So as the instructions, please post your screenshots, responses, whatever you'd like in the question for instructor forum to receive participation. All right, so the scenario is the sales manager gives you the following list of ranges. And basically it's a price range, name, and price not to exceed. So it's a range. And basically the name is none. So 0 to 50 is none, 50 to, or 0 is none, 50 or less is low, 150 or less is medium, etc. So you have received this list of price ranges and names. What I'd like for you to do is construct a case expression using the production of product table to compare the list price to a range of values, these range of values, and then return the appropriate price range name. So you're going to compare all of the list prices in the production of product table and categorize them according to this range. And next, the sales manager wants to see if the product's sorted by price, range. Okay. Next, the sales manager wants to see the products sorted by price range and then product name. So basically, you want to create this case statement with range of prices, and you want to sort them by product price and then by product name. So I thought I had a pictorial representation of that. And then finally, the sales manager would like for you to create a summary group results table based on the price ranges, minimum, maximum, average, and the number of prices. These will be your columns. So you have your price range, those 7 price ranges, and then the minimum price in that range, the maximum price in that range, the average price in that range, and the number of products in that range based on the production of product table. So each of those columns will represent, like the no price or the 0, there's actually 200 products in there with no price. Like the low price between 0 and 50, as you see, the low price is $229, the high price is $49.99, the average price, etc. And then there's 53 products. Does that make sense? I know it seems like a lot, but it's not that difficult.
Professor, one question.
Yes.
So the aggregate functions, how do we apply them to the cases? Because when we are writing the case expression, at that time we give a name for that particular column, right? But we cannot apply that to that particular column name because it is a user-defined column name and doesn't exist.
Okay, now remember, you're going to apply the aggregate function to the list price. Remember, all of these are based on the list price. You're not applying it to the case, even though we're using the case to create the range here. We're creating the calculations for each of these columns based on that range of list prices.
Okay, so basically what we are expected is to use the over and partition by, is it?
No. No, these are all very basic aggregate function, meaning min, max, average, and then count.
Okay. I mean, what like confusion I had was because we are still, if we see the sample data shown here, in the price, we are still displaying the price range column, right?
Right.
So then the min and max price is based for that particular price range, or is it for the complete column?
Right. Well, okay. Remember, the min, max are not based, really, they're only categorized by the ranges, but they're based on list price.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Remember, this is still a result table based on your your range categories, but you also have additional calculations in there, aggregate calculations based on, I'm kind of giving you the answer, but those are based on the list price.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. Basically, we can say that the number of products are basically based on the price range, but other things are just the list price.
Exactly.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm going to let you work on this for 20 minutes or so, and then I'm going to walk through some of it. Well, I don't want to give you all the complete answer, but I'm going to let you work on this for the next 25 minutes, and then I'll begin walking through some of it. So here, let me stop sharing my screen. You all have a copy of the exercise, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Where's the copy in the classroom?
Yes, it's in Loud Cloud and question for instructor.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to share my desktop. Over to my server. Okay, I hope you all got that far, right? You're all able to.
Yes, Professor.
Well, this is the easy part.
Yeah.
Do you just want us to upload it now or is it after? I'm sorry.
No, you can upload it whenever you finish and then you're done.
Oh, okay.
Are you already done? Who's that? Fernando?
Branislav.
Branislav, okay. You're
Yeah,
already done?
Yeah, I am also done. This
yes,
is
Professor.
Manish.
Yeah.
Ram, I'm also done, Professor.
Oh, okay, so once you've uploaded it, then yes, you're done. You can escape. Good job. You
Are
guys,
we just uploading this bit or the whole thing?
um,
Because there were multiple slides on the PowerPoint.
Right. The first upload should be this. The second should be the aggregate functions.
Okay. Okay.
So professor, I can take a screen print of the execution, right? That is enough,
Right.
right?
Right. Just a screenshot of the result. Well, the query and the result table.
Yeah. Yeah.
Professor, so
Yes.
I kind of compiled because there are a total of 3 questions. So I put question 1 and 2 like together. So you want us to submit them individually?
No, no. Basically, I just want to see two, even though it's 2 questions, I just want to see two screenshot uploads in a Word. This one and then the aggregate function one.
Professor, we can submit this like on a Word doc, or do you just want screenshots?
Yes, you can do both. Just put your name and then either screenshots, or you can copy and paste the queries into a Word doc.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't get mine to run. It's not running.
Which one? Your case win then?
Yeah, I'm stuck in that first one.
Does it look like the one that I'm showing you?
No, I actually did it quite different. I put like less than equal to 0.01 and greater than equal to 49.99. I think I overcomplicated it.
Yeah, you're overcomplicated it.
Professor, I attached a zip file, professor, in that one.
Pardon me?
I attached in the zip file in the participation section.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, professor.
Just to confirm it, sorry, I'm interrupting.
No problem.
Just to confirm it, so I don't have to upload I can use my snipping tool and just copy and paste it under participation in a Word document, or do you?
That's correct.
All right, cool, thank you.
Yeah.
So there'll be 3 screenshots, one to sort and then one to with the aggregate.
Yes, that is correct.
Hi, Professor.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Danish. I also submitted. Actually, I used CTE. That is fine, right?
Yes, that's fine. Absolutely.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you, Dinesh. Yeah.
Thanks, Professor.
I
Professor,
think we need to take out the name and list price, Professor, as we are doing the aggregate function, right, in the select.
Yes, I'm getting there. Did you have someone else have a question? Oh, you can put them in here too.
On the top, Professor, first line.
Yeah, I'm stuck. I don't know. I'll just have to figure it out later, I guess.
Where are you stuck?
I don't even know. I got the first part done. Second part, I don't even know if I'm there with the sorted by price. So is that the min, max, and average? Is that?
Right.
Yeah, I can't. It won't run. I don't know what I did wrong.
And you have the syntax, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have min, list, list price. I don't know if it's my commas. I don't know. Let's
Yeah,
see.
it's probably syntax. Right. So if you completed both, it should look like this with the aggregate functions. We have our case.
This is Emily. I do have a question on why you use the asterisk inside the count function instead of just using list price.
Well, it's just a wild card, so you can use list price there too. But generally you're just counting the number of rows that are returned for that particular group by.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I got the same results, but wasn't sure if there was something to it.
No, you can use list price. That's the column that we're counting. But if you use the wildcard, the star, then basically that's standard practice. You generally don't want to lock yourself into a column name, but yes, since list price is essentially driving all of our aggregate functions. So yes, you can use list price here too. That's fine. That will give you the same results. Yeah.
Professor, I also posted in the LowCloud, but I posted the queries. I didn't do the screenshots. Is that okay?
That is okay. Now I wanted to briefly go over this. Does everyone understand why we group by the case?
I was just going to ask that.
We group by the case because the case are these ranges. If we don't group by the case, then you'll get all of the 304 rows instead of the 6 rows. Does that make sense? So then your aggregate functions are based on your ranges, based on your case. Remember, this is just like another column. This whole case to n, that could be list price, but if you group by list price, you just get one, essentially one record. But so you're grouping by the case, meaning you can't group by the name or the alias, which is price range. That's essentially what you're doing. You're grouping by the price range. But remember, you can't group by the alias. So you have to group by the whole case. And that's the tricky part of the case expression. And this is how we can create this. A result table is grouped by each of the ranges from none to highest. And I don't have any of the golden, so. I thought there were some greater than 5,000, but nope. Does that make sense? Was that Emily?
No, that was Jill.
Jill, does that make sense?
Yes. Now I'm just trying to find a syntax problem.
Okay.
Earlier.
All right. So does everyone understand this syntax for your case expression?
Yep.
And I want to reiterate that all of this looks like a lot, but all of that is just one column. All of this up here represents this price range. The other columns are min price, max price, average price, and number of products, just as are represented in the result table.
And why are we using the order by at the bottom? Did I see order by?
Well, that's just to, if you take out the order by, you don't have a nice little, you can run it without the order by. See, it goes from none. We're ordering it by the min price. So basically the lower prices are on top. You can change that to max price. What will happen then? Oops. Actually, nothing. Because we're still going by list price. So, but if you take the order by out, let me just add a comment. Then basically you don't really have an order. You see,
Yeah, it's all mixed.
They're all mixed. So we do want an order there. So that's why we add the order by.
Professor, maybe if you and I can get offline, because I'm still stuck in the second part. I don't know what I don't know. I'm really stuck.
I'm stuck too. I just have one question for the second problem.
Go ahead.
When I'm doing mine, I also had the name in the select statement, and when I try to run the query, it says that name is not aggregated,
Right.
and it gives me error for that. But I see that you don't have that done here.
No, because we're not using the name as part of our aggregate functions, which is not a part of our group by. So you don't really need it here.
Okay.
Now, what you would have to do, you would have to add an aggregate function with the name in it. You can do something like, although since we're not concerned about the name, I just threw that in there just to see. For that, we're concerned about a range of products, not a specific product. So that's why we want to take the name out of there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I don't know. I'm still stuck. So I don't know.
Are you stuck on the first part or this?
The second, yeah, I'm just doing the second. I don't know. I
remember,
redid it just like you did, and it's still not. I'm still getting an error.
Okay, remember when you add your aggregate functions, you're just adding columns. So make sure you have a column, a comma, after your case when then in, a column after each of the aggregate functions until the last, your count column should not have a comma. That's usually the most
I do.
common
Yeah, I
case.
do. I just don't know.
And you have your from production.product table.
From production.product.
And then now do you have
so I have select name, comma, list price, comma, case, win, all the win cases there.
No, take the name and list price out.
I did, and I ran it, and it didn't even. I got the same error.
What error are you receiving?
It says, let me run it again. Message 8120, column production.product.list price is invalid.
Now, are you sure you're using your AdventureWorks database?
Yep, AdventureWorks 2016.
Okay. Let's see.
And I know the list price is on there because I'm looking at the columns on production.product on the left-hand side on the Object Explorer.
Yeah, the list price is, and you spelled it correctly and all that?
Yep. List price.
So, well, I always recommend just running a very basic select statement.
Maybe you can share the screen, right? Then we can see.
Yeah.
You might be missing something.
All right.
Sure. Let me see.
All right, let me stop my share and you share your screen.
All right. Are you guys able to see it now, or
It's coming.
It's coming.
Okay,
So I just took out or name and list price below select.
right?
I see the problem.
Yeah, you didn't copy the group by other stuff.
Yeah, you need the group by because you have your aggregate function. So you need to
I
group by
see.
the case.
Yeah,
Okay.
type group.
Fernando,
Yeah, I'm here.
on the first lane when it says select, I don't know, does it type select in space and type in Adventure Works?
No.
Well, it's on the top left corner here, so it's.
Oh yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
He's fine.
But he said it's the group by.
It's the
Type
group
group.
by. You need group by, and then you need to copy all of your case statement down to the when. Not, you need to add the end, but not the as price range. No,
Okay.
just the end. So you're copying that case statement and then paste that under the group by.
And you're missing the else statement.
Well,
That's okay, I think.
that's okay. We'll run without the else. I do recommend that you always use an else, but this will run without the. There you go.
There you go.
Okay. So that's the second one, and then the third one we just do the.
Now you do
This
have
is the third one actually.
Oh.
This is the third one. This.
Oh, then how do I get the second one? though? That's what I was trying to figure out. The second one. Wouldn't the second one be without all this, right, or without the group by?
Yeah, it doesn't have the function.
You don't need the min, max, average.
Yeah, the second one is without all the aggregate functions. You just.
So is this the second one here? I mean, I thought that was the first one.
Yeah, essentially you're just sorting the second one. But as I said, I mean, the second one is not that important. I just wanted you to do the first one and then the last one. Those two are the most important.
Okay, I'm gonna unshare now. I don't even know how to do that.
Well,
oh, I got it, I think.
Well, you do have a null on your price range, your case when.
So right here, so just do like an all else something rather. Or?
Why do you have a null?
Yeah, because you didn't put the else case for that in the case statement.
So if I put else just like the instructor did, else.
Yeah.
And professor, you just put else golden just because that's something that you came up with. It's not like I didn't see. Yeah.
There's nothing special about that. I just, yeah.
So I run it with an else. Once I added that else, it just created a bunch of errors. So maybe I just take that out.
You might have missed on the top actually. Both the places you need to add else.
I'm sorry?
Have you added in the both the places? Case as well as select?
Yeah. The group by, yeah, all that. Oh, now it's not running. I don't know. Messed up again.
Yeah, make sure you have all the basic components of a select with aggregate functions and a group by. Because basically a group by or a scenario like this, either it's in an aggregate or it's in a part of your group by, which is why the case is not an aggregate, which it can't be an aggregate. So that's kind of the trick of this. As I said before, your aggregate is on list price, and then you're just grouping it by the ranges. That's the key, and most everyone figured that out pretty quickly. So
on yours, like where I have my null on the price range, you have none. How did you get it to say none? Because you have that else statement under golden, or
the none.
Well, none was my zero.
Oh, here, yeah, I have 0 there as none too on mine. I just don't have a null then. Okay, I'll have to.
Well, you're using 2016, and it does have a a value higher than 5,000. That's why. So what you need to do is, did you put your else statement in there?
No, I didn't. No. When I put an else statement, like if I do one like yours, else golden. I run it. I get a bunch of error messages like level 16, 8120.
Yeah, you have some syntax errors now again. So if you want to share your screen again, we all can help you.
Let's see. So I added else golden right here and I ran it, and then I have all these error messages now where once I take the else statement out, it doesn't give me any errors.
No, in the group by you didn't include the same condition.
Oh, I have
Else,
to put else down here?
yeah,
Oh, I
exactly.
see.
Different. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I see. Simple stuff, huh? Sorry.
It happens.
And there it is.
There you
Okay.
go.
All right. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Yep. Good job.
So Professor, so when I ran mine, the first was gold, yours is 200, the number of products. Do I need to do order by to get it in that?
Yes, just do order by one of your aggregate. You can share your screen too if you want, Sylvia.
Yeah, I kind of have, okay, I'll share. But I kind of have it done. This is what I have. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I ran it, the first one has a 35 years, had 200. So
just do an order by min price.
Just that, or do I need to do all of them? Okay.
And you just run that.
Oh gosh, no. Okay.
There you go. Good job.
All right. Thank you.
Good job. Are you running Azure with Docker, Sylvia?
Yes, I use both.
Okay. All right. Anyone else having issues? Yep. Make sure you post either screenshots or Word doc or whatever you prefer under the question for instructor forum post that says topic 2 participation, and you'll receive your, actually the way that I run it, that's like 3/4 of your participation. The other 25% is just, attendance. Roughly.
Showing up.
Yeah.
The hardest part, huh?
Yeah. All right. Everyone else good?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. We'll see when it comes to the homework.
All right. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.